Hey guys, so welcome back to my video series where I'm going through all of the different choices in the Dread Elf Legendary Army book. It's still being changed because it's still in alpha, so the choices are still under discussion. But let's continue with the special section that we were discussing before. So we had about half of the choices, and this video is going to feature the other half of them, and also it's going to include the black cloaks that are just on their own in the raiders category. So first choice for this video will be the Harpies. Harpies have been changed a little bit from the previous book with an increase in the minimum size of the unit. So now you have to take a minimum 8 models. This is a bit of a different type of unit that you're used to because practically it's just a chaff unit. But development of the labs in general. I believe the idea is to kind of omit the concept of chaff units, whose sole purpose is to chaff a little bit from the books. And with some armies this is a bit more successful than with others. But for Dread Elves this means that the cheapest unit is going to be about 150 points, 160 points. So you don't have any pure chaff anymore. At like 110 points or 100 points. But then again, you should get something back for this, and I think the 160 points is kind of the same as what the unit used to cost with 8 models. So in that regard, they are comparable. Well, what changed to the unit? So they did get Send of Blood now. They have a fly advance of 10 inches. I believe they used to have 9 inches. And they went to 2 attacks at strength 4. But they do have defensive 2 now. I don't recall exactly what the previous stats were, but in the end, it's a chaff unit that can do a little bit of combat. I mean, if you have 8 models, you're likely going to run them 4 wide. If you run them 4 wide and you charge into something with the 2 attacks per model, you're going to end up with 12 attacks on your target at agility 5 effectively on the charge. With offensive 3, so that's going to be about 6 hits at strength 4 with AP 0. So in terms of fighting, this is not a really good fighting unit. And I think it will actually lose out to a lot of other small units. It might be able to hurt some other chaff in enemy armies, like a unit of fast cavalry of 5 models. They might not get too happy with the charge of some Harpies. And the Harpies will likely also not receive too much damage back. It's a little bit dicey. Even these light chaff wars basically. So the advantage of the unit is that it's flying and that it's flying 18 inches even. So from out of nowhere basically you can just chaff nearly anywhere significant. And yeah, that is already quite powerful. Then the fly 10 inches with Send of Blood means that you have an effective charge range of 23 inches with Swift Stride. And now 23 inches would be a really long charge, but yeah, you can quite reliably go for a charge at 20 inches. I think you'll fail about half the time. But likely you will just hide your Harpies behind one of your own units, and then if you charge and you fail the charge, you're going to stay behind your own unit anyway. So in that sense, it's quite a reliable charge to make. Either you make it or you don't, and if you don't, then you're not going to lose your unit. So you could even set it up in such a way that in case of a failed charge, you do go like 2 inches forward, and then the next turn you would only need a 7 on Swift Stride, which would be ideal. So the only downside to this unit I see is the fact that you have defensive of only 2. That means that anything that has offensive 3, which is quite a lot in 9th age, is still going to hit you on a 3+. You have resilience 3, you don't have any armor. So even just basic troops, like the classical offensive 3, strength 3 profile, if you go into a unit that has 10 attacks, then they're going to hit 5 times. They're going to win 2 to 3 times. Probably you'll just lose out on the combat, even in the first round of the combat, which is not that ideal. And coupled with the discipline 6, if you're going to lose combat, you better have your general near, because otherwise you're going to just flee the field. I think it's an interesting choice in the Dark Elf book. I don't know if it's correctly priced now, and also if it's a profile that actually works. It's still the closest thing that Red Elves have to very mobile chaff, just with the sole purpose of being chaff. But I believe it should be quite efficient at taking out ranged units. I think that would be the idea. But then I would have liked it if they could also benefit from the Beastbreaker special rule, where they get hatred on the charge. But they are not harnessed, so they cannot get hatred from the Beastbreakers, I believe. So that would still be something that I could imagine would change to them in the future, so that you can get this delicious hatred on your Harpies on the charge through the Beastbreakers. Then the next entry is going to be the Gorgons. So Gorgons, they used to be a little bit different in the previous iteration of this lab, with them being 125 points per extra model, and this actually went down by 20% to 100 points a model. It's still quite pricey for just 3 hit point resilience for 0 armor, but Aegis 5 up model. But then again, the damage output on these guys is immense. So you have 4 attacks standard, which is nothing to be impressed about. You can buff it up with paired weapons to 5 attacks, or with a halberd to strength 5. You can effectively swing at either strength 5 or strength 6, depending on the weapon choice, because of ruthless efficiency. They have agility 5 with lightning reflexes, so they strike as fast as your other elves. They move 7, March 14. They are beasts, so they do have swift stride. They have strider anything, which really is a big thing in the book, I think, because there's not a lot of strider in the book. They are fearless, so they play well on the flanks. They cause fear themselves even. So you could get that reroll 1 to wound through the Mask of the Warcrow if you wanted to. And then they still have the Petrifying Stare. The Petrifying Stare is, well, as you can read the initiative step 10, you have to roll dice. And depending on your height, you're going to take wounds on either 4+, 5+, or 6+. This means that any cowboys that charge into a unit of Gorgons are going to be quite unhappy, especially if they have a base of 40mm wide or more, because then you pull in the 3rd Gorgon, otherwise you would only have to face 2 of them. But still, if you're facing 2 of them with, for example, a horse-mounted cowboy, then you're going to get 4 hits at initiative step 10 with AP 10 that wound on a 4+, regardless of your resilience or anything. Provided you survive that, you're still going to get 8 to 10 offensive 5, lightning reflex attacks at strength 4 or 5 with a +1 to wound. So it's really a big damage output for a unit. They do also still get the stomps, and this unit clearly is quite strong if it gets to do what it wants to do. If it doesn't, then it's quite expensive for what it brings to the table. And now you can either play this as just a single Gorgon, then they're 160 points, so as expensive as a unit of Harpies, and if you play them single, then they're going to be able to fulfill this chaff role, but I always found that the 7-inch, 14-inch just is not good enough on a 40mm base. I usually end up in a situation where with non-flyer chaff, I really want to have 16 inches march move. Ideally 18 inches march move, but 14 inches just always seems to be just that little bit too short. So I would rather recommend to just run them as a combat unit for 360 points. You can still put on some paired weapons or halberds, depending on your choice, your preference. I think the paired weapons are still quite good because you do get that +1 to wound in the first round of combat, and you're going to go to 5 attacks, you go to offensive 6, you ignore parry, so that really seems like a good deal. Whilst the halberds, you already have the special attack with the Petrifying Stare that deals with armor. So just to spice up your combat output against infantry mostly, I think the paired weapons is going to be the better option. So a unit of 3, it is quite risky because it's only 9 HP in the end. With Resilience 4, Aegis 5+, they are not going to like shooting all that much. And they are probably going to be one of the few multi-wound models in your army. So consider maybe including them together with some other multi-wound army choices, like a Thunderpack or like a Dragon or Manticore, maybe even Raptor Chariots, just to distract the multi-wound targeted ranged damage from your opponent a little bit away from them. And just hope that your opponent doesn't shoot them. I have read a couple of battle reports now where they've been used, and most people argue that a lot of people don't really realize how big the combat potential of this unit is until they're in combat, and that's a good thing. That's a good way to get them delivered, because you can still just march 14 inches up the first turn, charge the second turn, because on the flanks there's not going to be a lot that really wants to charge into these guys when there's still 3 models in the unit. Yeah, just be sure that the rest of your army is scary enough for your opponent to allow these guys to do their work, and you'll not be disappointed, I think. The other choice in the army that is a large beast is the Thunderpack. So the Thunderpack comes with 3 models, and you can increase the unit to 6 models. They start out at 290 points, 70 points per extra model. And their main selling point probably is going to be their Resilience 1. They have Armor 1 with Light Armor to give you a 5 of armor save. Yet in the army, Resilience 5 is really rare, so this is an interesting choice for that reason. Whether it's worth it to get 3 models for 290 points, I don't know. I think based on the profile that we'll go through, I think you're going to see a lot of units just running at 3 models and not at 6 models. But we'll just go through the profile and then you'll see for yourself. So they have Advanced 6 and March 10. March 10 is nothing too big. So I think the fluff reason for this would be that the Lash Masters are just on foot and they march with the Thunderbeasts. Maybe the Thunderbeasts themselves are not that fast also. They do have Sand of Blood and an advance of 6 inches, so on the charge you can look at a 6-inch charge, 7 inches if you're charging against a target that has already been previously wounded in battle, with Swift Stride because you're a beast. And if you manage to pull off the charge, you have Devastating Charge, +1 Strength, +1 AP, and Terror, and you have D3 +1 impact hits. Note these impact hits, they don't benefit from the +1 Strength on the charge, because there was a reason for this. I believe it's because impact hits never benefit from special rules that are carried by the unit, like for example flaming attacks. So you're gonna have, if you are charging in with 3 models, you're gonna make contact with 3 models. You're gonna look at 3d3 +3 Strength 5 impact hits, and then you're gonna have 6 attacks with offensive 3 with Strength 6, AP 3, and then you still have 6 attacks from the Lash Masters at Strength 3. At 290 points, that is quite a lot of damage output on the charge. It's kind of like a Staggeron, and you have like 9 wounds with Resilience 5. So with the advance of 6 or with the advance of 7 against the ideal targets, it kind of looks like a Staggeron, also because they are large beasts. They have light troops, which is not to be discarded. And I think with that combination, all in all, it's really a good counter charge unit. The funny thing is that it's a counter charge unit in an army that doesn't have any anvils. So I think the closest thing to an anvil in the Dread Elves is going to be the Dread Legionnaires, the Spearmen, because you can field these in high numbers and then you can just grind out if you want to, but I wouldn't advise it. Otherwise, you can maybe hold up someone with a cowboy, in some way with Task Forged and a 1-up. So a 1-up rerollable armor save. Yet in any other way, this is going to be really tricky to do. So you can't really play this unit in the same sense as you do with the Stegadon, and also your target needs to not be occupied in the front facing, or at least the facing that you're charging at with your Thunderpack. Because in that sense, if you only get one model in contact, you're only going to get D3+1 impact hits. You're only going to get 2 attacks at strength 5, strength 6 on the charge. So the biggest use for this unit is to have terror. So you can just do a charge at something and cause a terror check. And also I'm seeing this more like a unit that can fix your lines if you're playing very heavy MSU. And inevitably somewhere your plan goes wrong, and then this unit can countercharge. So what I'm talking about here is, for example, you have just a spam of units of 10 Judicators and some Obsidian Guard in there. I think it would be really valuable to have one unit of Thunderpack in there to just cover your backlines, basically. So combine that with 2 units of Repeater batteries, and you have a unit that can protect your repeater batteries, that can charge anything that goes through your lines, because, well, if your opponent charges you and you hold and the opponent overruns, then you're going to be able to countercharge with your Thunderpack. If he doesn't overrun, you can still probably charge with your Thunderpack if you set it up correctly. And then getting off these 3d 3+3 impact hits, which is going to be the main strength of the unit, that's going to be really nice. Now, the reason why this unit doesn't work in higher model count units is going to be because of harnessed. So harnessed models cannot give supporting attacks or harnessed profiles. So if you have a Thunderbeast in the back rank, it cannot attack at all. It will not give you any impact hits. It will not give you any attacks. So you'll just get 2 Lash Master attacks, which in a short condensed way is just not good. It sucks. So there's still a very interesting combination for the Thunderback available within the book, which is going to be the combination of the Thunderback with the Beast Breakers. This gives them hatred on the charge, but then again, you are only looking at 6 attacks that are really valuable. Getting hatred on these is going to net you 1 or 2 more hits rather than just the normal 3 hits you get, probably against most targets. But it does guarantee that on the charge you're even more lethal than you would assume. So all in all, I think it's a really interesting choice to design for the Dread Elf army. I think it's kind of a choice that doesn't really fit in with the army mechanically, and also maybe also fluff-wise. I'm not going to go into the fluff, but some people are arguing that it's not the best fit for Dread Elves because of the low advance. But I mean, if you're gonna have to get Resilience 5 in the army, I think this is a way better solution than anything else. Even though I really did like the Raptor Chariots with Resilience 5. Then the next thing we are going to look at is the Raptor Chariot. So indeed, it did drop in Resilience to Resilience 4 instead of Resilience 5. And with that, I think it really got hurt badly in this iteration. Mostly because you're going to suffer twice as many wounds against sources with strength 3. You're going to take 1/3 more wounds against sources with strength 4, relative to having resilience 5. So that's a big difference, actually. However, now it does come with Swift, with the Strand of Blood, and otherwise the profile is more or less the same, except for the fact that the crew have gone up to 2 attacks each. So the crew hits a little bit harder. The Diver Raptor also hits a little bit harder with Lethal Strike rather than not having Lethal Strike. But yeah, to be fair, 200 points for a Resilience 4 Chariot with movement 7 only, even though it has Sand of Blood, so it's gonna have an effective advance of 8 inches against injured targets. Resilience 4 with a 3-up armor save, it's really like a Lion Chariot now. So it is quite comparable in that sense. However, Lion Chariots, the Lions, they already have strength 5 from themselves, and the crew on a Lion Chariot has well, strength 6 with a great weapon that multiplies wounds. So on the charge, these crew are going to be a little bit more effective with 4 attacks at strength 7 effectively, because of the lance. It's going to go to strength 6 and you have +1 to wound. And also you still have the lightning reflexes because you don't use a great weapon. However, if you're going to get charged, a monster, if you have a fully healthy chariot, so just the 4 wounds, a monster might still struggle against the chariot to fully knock it down. And also your crew is going to likely strike before the monster even. And so a Lion Chariot, you don't really want to charge with a monster. You can still just use it actually as an anvil against a lot of monsters. Whilst this Raptor Chariot, if it's going to get charged by anything, it's going to go down. It's really not built to grind. I'm not a big fan of the Raptor Chariot with Resilience 4. You could turn it into a really glass cannon, I think. So things I have been considering is to use 2 Legion Legates paired up with a Raptor Chariot to get a full rank. And then with the previous iteration of the book, you would still benefit from Academy trained. Now you don't anymore, because the Legion Legates don't get Academy trained anymore if they're not on foot, or at least not the bonuses. So yeah, I think this one, it's going to be a support piece. It's not going to be taken a lot. It's really to support your army now, that is true. You won't see the chariot spam anymore, that is true. But yeah, it got hurt bad. Just through the loss of 1 resilience, but that really makes all the difference, respective to just small arms fire. Longbows are going to hurt it. Crossbows are going to hurt it even more, just because, well, you just lost 1 resilience, and it's going to have to survive all this enemy shooting. That's in an army that is already a little bit susceptible to shooting. I think it's going to be a hard sell. The next choice is going to be the Divine Altar. This choice is going to be equally expensive to a Raptor Chariot, and it does have Resilience 5. It has more wounds, it has an Aegis. It doesn't have the same armor as a Raptor Chariot, but it does have kind of a comparable damage output if it's not charging. Just the same as the Raptor Chariot. However, if you wanted to be able to move, you have to upgrade it to a Crucible of Slaughter, and that costs you another 100 points. So that is basically where the comparison to the Raptor Chariot falls short. Now there's actually 2 choices hidden in this profile. So the Effigy of Dread is completely different, I would say, from the Crucible of Slaughter. So the Crucible of Slaughter is going to cost you 300 points, and it's kind of like the old Divine Altar that you could encounter with Dread Elves. So they tossed out the option where you gave Death Trance to everyone within 12 inches, or a 6-up Aegis, or Swift Stride, or maximum charge rolls or something, with quite an impressive damage output. However, all of that has been toned down now, and I think it's a bit of a shame that it got toned down so much, because basically you're paying 300 points to include a model in one of your units that does kind of like the same as the unit would do. So you have 3 attendants on your Divine Altar with 2 attacks each, with Blades of Darak, so they go to 3 attacks each, with Battle Focus and Ruthless Efficiency, so that you strike at offensive 5, you don't ignore parry, but you have effectively strength 4 in the first round of combat, and if you get any magic buffs on your unit, this Divine Altar, then attendants are going to go up in strength. So how does that compare to other infantry in the Dread Elf Armybook? Basically, this is really similar to the profile of the Temple Militants that also have 2 attacks because of the Blades of Darak. Then they have offensive 4, maybe 5, I guess 4. They also have strength 3. You're only gaining 1 AP. And the reason that I'm counting 2 attacks for the Temple Militants, it should actually be 3, is because, well, with the supporting attacks, this Divine Altar is going to sit in your unit and you won't have any supporting attacks. So for a frontage of 60 millimeters, this is going to net you 9 attacks. If you have a unit of Temple Militants, actually you're going to win out on attacks, because they have 1 attack per model. They have the Blades of Darak, so they go 2 per person. They have fighting extra rank, so 60 millimeter wide frontage of the Blades of Darak is going to net you 12 attacks instead of the 9 of this Divine Altar. Then this Divine Altar does have AP1, whereas the Temple Militants don't. But then again, are you going to pay 300 points just to get AP1 on your unit? I'm not that convinced. Still, it gives you like 15 models worth of ranks. So that's a good thing, that you only need 4 extra models to have a rank in your infantry unit. However, in my opinion, if you are already down to the point where you only had 4 infantry models left in your infantry unit, then it's already not going that well. And the investment of 300 points for just 6 HP, resilience 5, 5 of Aegis, to actually downgrade your unit's combat potential, that is, I'm not really a big fan of that. The only thing that I have been ignoring in this comparison still is the fact that Crucible of Slaughter also gives -1 resilience to the models unit, so that's your own unit, yet also to your enemy units in base contact with the model. So if you're going to charge in the flank, then you might get the issue that you're not lowering the resilience. No, I'm reading that wrong. So it's also with the models units. You suffer -1 resilience. You do suffer the -1 resilience. However, with the new Dread Elves, it's not really going to be the problem of beating the resilience of your opponent. Because look at it this way: if you have a unit of Temple Militants that you invest an extra 300 points in, or you put a Divine Altar in it, if you're going to put an extra 300 points worth of Temple Militants in there, the Temple Militants are 17 points each, I think, more or less. You're going to get more than 15 models, so you might even get close to 20 models, I'm not sure there. But 15 wounds worth of Temple Militants versus this Divine Altar, I'm going to rather include just 15 more Temple Militants. I mean, if your opponent has some specific tools to deal with large constructs, such like anything that has the multiple wound characteristic, like a cannon or a mortar, or well, anything like a mortar really benefits from you having a Divine Altar in your unit rather than just more guys, because you're gonna get the hits against the unit with your mortar, and this single one strong hit you can just allocate towards the Divine Altar, whilst otherwise it would just land on a regular rank and file model. So if your opponent is going to be capable of removing one model with resilience 5, 6 HP, and a 5 of Aegis, then yeah, it's I'm not too big of a fan of this choice. Anyway, the other option is going to be the Effigy of Dread. The Effigy of Dread gains Channel, Fear, and Unbreakable, and it's not just Channel, it's Channel 3. So this is really impressive. Normally, through Talismans of the Void, for example, you would pay 150 points only for the Channel 3. In addition, the model cannot declare any charges, nor perform pursuit, and advance and march rate are always 0 inches. Cannot perform any moves, not even random. But the extra bonus you get from it is that friendly units within 18 inches of the model gain Fear. So only part of your unit has to be within 18 inches, and I think this is a really important part of it, because you will end up pushing with your Dread Elves if you're allowed to get the first turn. And even against gun lines, then with 18 inches of the model, you might still make it if you can count the backside of your unit. However, you can still increase the range of this Effigy of Dread by 3 inches for 1 veil token, or 6 inches for 2 veil tokens, meaning that you can get up to 24 inches of bubble. In that case, you will most likely be able to give your own unit fear. Now, why is fear interesting for Elves? It's in the current meta mostly interesting to basically become immune to fear, because there's a lot of fear around. I believe the intention of the design teams is of the rules team or any of these teams is going to be to reduce the amount of fear all over 9th age. So there's going to be less units that are fearless. There's going to be less units that have fear, and still against the armies that do feature fear now, you're going to be fearless, and against the armies that don't, you are going to cause fear, which is a very interesting rule. In addition, this couples really nicely with the Mask of the Warcrow. I think that if you are going to include the Effigy of Dread in your army, you should definitely also include the Mask of the Warcrow, because then effectively you can just buff up like 3 units at the same time to get a reroll of your Once to Wound. Yeah, so if you value the channel 3 at about 150 points, then for 50 points you're gonna get just a model that is quite tough to beat, and that still gives you this fear bubble effect. I think this is a really, really, really well priced or really cheap choice in this Elves de Armybook. However, if your opponent doesn't care too much about you getting channel 3, which is hard to imagine, but if he doesn't care too much, and also he doesn't care too much about your fear bubble, he can just ignore the model at all and not deal with it. I think there's going to be a lot of players that see it as a threat, and they're going to charge it with something that can get into your backline, so probably something light, or maybe some kind of cowboy. But then again, it still is going to strike with 9 attacks, with battle focus, with AP1, and the models itself still has 6 HP with resilience 5 and an Aegis 5+. So Duskforged cowboys might want to run into this thing, but there's not a lot of other units that would want to. Then the last choice I'm going to discuss in this video are the Black Cloaks. So they do fall under the Radar category together with the Shadow Riders with repeater crossbows, the Corsairs with throwing weapons, and the Legion Auxiliaries. So I think the main competitor for the Radar category, of which you can only field 20% in your army, is going to be the Legion Auxiliaries, especially with repeater crossbows that only have 2 shots at short range, rather than the 3 shots that we played with a little bit, because in that case the Shadow Riders would be the top choice probably. So Black Cloaks, they used to be quite good, because they were only 27 points per extra model, which was already quite steep for a Resilience 3 Armor 0 model. Armor 1 with light armor, sure. But now after the update, they have been made more expensive, up to 40 points. So that's a 50% point increase, giving you a 1 HP Resilience 3 model for 40 points. Oh my god. So we were previously discussing the fact that the Gorgons were quite pricey for the hit pool that they brought, which was 3 HP at Resilience 4 with a 5 of Aegis, and now we're looking at a 1 HP model with Resilience 3 with just light armor. So this model, extra models in this unit are actually more expensive than Raptor Knights, which is quite severe. So what is the reason for all this fuss? Black Cloaks, I mean, they have 1 attack, offensive 3, strength 3. They have paired weapons and poison attacks, so they do go up to 2 attacks at offensive 5. They ignore parry, they have strength 4 in combat effectively in the first round of combat, and they have agility 5, so they likely strike first against most threats that charge them. Now, if you are going to charge them with fast cavalry like Wolf Riders, you can have, if they're 5 wide and there's only 5 models, you can have 10 attacks coming your way that hit you on 2+, that wound you on 3+, so that's going to be likely 5 or 6 wounds. AP0 though, so you're gonna lose a couple of Wolf Riders, but that's it. And then the Wolf Riders, they might just kill a couple of Black Cloaks, so in combat they're not gonna be that effective. However, the shooting of these guys is what caused them to increase in troops in cost. So they do have Scout and Skirmisher, they can deploy quite close to the enemy, and they have Repeater Handbows that have a 12-inch maximum range. I believe Repeater Handbows are quick to fire accurate, but I'm not sure on that. However, they do it on 3+, and they have poison attacks. So a unit of 10 of these guys has 20 shots with poison, so the 6s, they wound them automatically, they hit on 3+ otherwise. So against a resilience 3 target with no armor, which would be ideal, they're gonna have 20 shots, of which 3 wound automatically, of which another 10 are gonna hit, and that's another 5 wounds. So that would be 8 wounds for one unit that used to cost 285 points. I get that that was nice, just to put it in a positive way. However, 40 points per extra model, I mean, at 285 points for 10 models, to me, it felt on the cheap side. But on the other hand, if you get one fireball over the unit, the unit's just gone. A fireball and a blaze is gonna net you like 5-6 hits. It's gonna be 4 Black Cloaks gone, and your unit just crippled. They have to take a discipline test, discipline 8. I think a bit more playtesting would be in order to bump up the price to 40 points per extra model. I mean, they're still just resilience 3 light armor pieces. They are really rock, paper, scissors in their design. If your opponent does have an answer, then they're gonna be toast. If he doesn't, then they're gonna rock the field. However, the responses or the answers to this unit vary from anything armored, basically anything armored, to anything with decent armor and a couple of wounds, to just anything that doesn't care about getting wounds. Like, for example, you can counter this with Raptor Arms, you can counter this with a Chariot, you can counter this with some monster with still a 3-up armor save, you can counter it with any cowboy in the game, you can counter this with your own scouts. I mean, if you're going to shoot at them and you have a -1 to it, who cares? There's so many different answers to this unit that I don't think it's a good idea to price them at 40 points per extra model. I get that they shot really, really well with the Repeater Handbows. Maybe you could just bump up the Repeater Handbow 2-hit value on to a 4+, because they have quick to fire accurate. But yeah, the pricing currently doesn't really make sense. So this is still probably going to change, I would say. That's going to be it for this video. So I hope you like this series that I'm doing. Next time we'll focus on the menagerie, so the beasts, the big beasts in the book. Also we'll include the repeater battery and the hunting chariot. So that's the destroyers part of the book. And with that we will conclude this series. Yeah, so that's that. See you next time.